The runoffs are over. It's Stitt versus Edmondson. And do we need to give you any more information about how every vote counts? Drummond, Hunter, 200 votes, plus negative ads off and running. All of this time on this episode. It's Mitchell Talks, the News 9 Sessions with Grant Herms and Aaron Brillbeck right now. Good morning, Mr.
Good morning.
Herms. Good morning, Mr. Brillbeck. This was a historic race. You have somebody who, you talk about the outsiders are insiders now, right? Stitt wins, 68 of the state's 77 counties? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a big win.
It was, I'm not surprised that Stitt won. I'm surprised by how much he won. It wasn't just a beating, it was a beatdown. 10% is what a lot of people were guessing. This was a bit higher than that. But when you look at the map that shows which counties were won by Stitt, which counties were won by Cornette, it really puts it in perspective. Nobody's surprised that Cornette won Oklahoma City, Oklahoma County. Nobody's surprised that Stitt won Tulsa. But I think a lot of people were surprised by how much Stitt won the outlying areas. And a lot of that was doing the micro campaigning. It wasn't just necessarily going and knocking on every single door individually and going to the town halls. A lot of it was by using social media and targeting specifically who he wanted to target. In this case was the Trump voters.
You realize how difficult 1 month, or how much it changes in a month. 1 month ago we were going, we don't know if Stitt will make it into the runoff. Mm-hmm. Right? Todd Lamb, gone. Mick Cornette, gone.
I mean, right from the beginning, though, Stitt was able to pull the Todd Lamb voters, which were in the more rural parts of the state. And so we've been saying since the primary that it's going to be those rural voters. If they show up, where they show up, and who they show up for, it's going to make the difference. And it absolutely did here.
That's what was up in the air, though. How do you think Stitt pulled all those Lamb voters?
I think it helped. The last round of ads where he linked himself to Trump and painted Cornette in some ways rightly, in some ways wrongly, as a never Trumper. And I think that really helped in those rural parts of the state.
I covered the Cornette campaign for their watch party, and he gave a pretty eloquent speech, concession speech, but you could tell he was hurt.
As you know, those numbers did not come in tonight, but Terry and I want to thank all of the people along the way. I can't tell you how many people we have met, all the potluck dinners, the rodeos. What am I forgetting? The county fairs. Someone told us when we began that this would be like getting a PhD in Oklahoma. And boy, do we feel educated about the great people of this state.
Where he talks about, we certainly got a PhD in Oklahoma during this campaign. It would have helped if he had had that degree before the campaign instead of during it. And he was always trying to play catch up as a true Okie, where Stitt was just able to voice that more than Cornette was, even though, Stitt and Cornette kind of have similar professional backgrounds.
There's a really good chance my name will never be on another ballot. And so you need to understand tonight, as I step away from the political scene, how much I've always loved the opportunity to represent you.
What's interesting to me is the pundits are just so wrong all the time. I mean, when you look at what happened in the lieutenant governor's race, there's nobody in this town thought that Dana Murphy was going to finish 20 points behind.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Man, it was just an incredible thing. Let me ask you this. How can we go in 60 days from there's no way Stitt gets into a runoff to having the President of the United States calling him up and saying, you're my guy? This is less than 60 days this is all going on, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I was surprised in the first place that the president got involved in the race. Oklahoma's a pretty safe Republican state. And I know, Aaron, you're going to disagree with me on this, but maybe it's because it's an open seat in the governor's office this year that Republicans broadly are worried about this. I'm more inclined to think that the president rewards loyalty and sycophancy, and that's what we saw at the end of this campaign for Stitt. And I think somebody, either Stitt himself or somebody who knows the president here, was like, hey, throw our guy a bone and send this endorsement. It was also kind of a boilerplate endorsement. He used the same sentences, plural, in most of his endorsements this round of the primaries.
You're right, I'm going to disagree with you. What I think it is the president realizes that the Democrats are looking very close at Oklahoma, that the Democrats nationally want to win Oklahoma, because if you can turn a red state blue in time for the presidential election, at least the perception that a red state turns blue with blue leadership, that's going to bode very well for whoever runs against President Trump.
But just in the governor's office, I don't know if you can say that Oklahoma would turn blue necessarily. I think Democrats are watching Oklahoma for different reasons, for turnout reasons, for maybe 5, 10 years down the line, 2020, 2024, maybe they'll have a real foothold. I don't know how scared Republicans actually are, or for that matter, the president is, that a Democrat in office in Oklahoma is really going to be that much of a signal to Democrats nationally. I don't know.
I disagree. I think it's a perception thing. We did talk with Drew Edmondson. Stitt says he's excited to face Drew Edmondson. That's going to be an interesting one to watch in terms of how they decide to go after each other.
We're so excited to be in this position and lead Oklahoma, and now it's just time that we can rally the Republican base and move forward. People are ready for change. They're ready for an outsider. People don't want to look backwards, and we want to look forwards. And so I'm running against a guy that's been in politics his whole career, and it's going to be more of the same. And so that's why we'll win in November as well.
And also interesting too, I talked with Cornette after he lost, asked him specifically, "Are you going to endorse Stitt?" And he danced around a little bit. He clearly isn't supporting him just yet.
I certainly don't wish him no ill will. I mean, it's, you know, I told him I wished him well and good luck, and he's got a big assignment starting tomorrow.
It doesn't sound like an endorsement.
Well, it's too soon. You know, you don't want to do anything on the night of. I think it's appropriate to let things settle down.
I think that's a hard question to answer. Like, it was like, what, 10 minutes, 15 minutes after he lost?
Not even.
So I think he was still a little wounded. I'm sure he'll come around to supporting the candidate for his own party. He might not. I mean, he didn't endorse the president either.
But
so
does
we'll
he
see.
have to? Because he's saying he's out of politics now. Does he have to necessarily support the party?
Maybe not, and I'm not sure that would help Stitt. I'm not sure Stitt would want that, because right now, most of the Cornette voters are really wounded too. And so I don't know if maybe in a couple months, if 30 days, halfway through the 60-day period we're in now, if they come around and Cornette says, yeah, okay, I'll endorse Stitt. If he even wants it, I don't know. And do we really think Cornette's going to stay out of politics?
I don't know, but there's another headstone in the political graveyard of Oklahoma City mayors. Just ask Senator Coates, Senator Humphreys, and Governor Cornette. I mean, there just seems to be something there. Can I ask you guys about, we did this the other night on our election coverage. Great job, by the way. And the next morning, you guys were on fire, which, by the way, we won ratings on Tuesday night. Are you surprised about that?
Not even close.
So when I was asking Shepard, who did a great job, Bill Shepard did a great job the other night, did great all the way up through the elections. Can't wait for that debate in September, that News 9, News on 6 debate. I think that's where the campaign's about to, you'll congeal the general election for governor. But I think that Drew Edmondson's people threw a party the other night. I think they want to run against Stitt. I think he's somebody that they can define. But at the same time, Bill says, no, there's no record with Stitt. It's going to be harder to define him. So once you handicap that, who wanted to run? It's academic now, right?
Right.
But the fact is that somebody's got an advantage by running against Mick Cornette. Stitt winning over Cornette, because a lot of people thought Mick Cornette would be the most difficult person for Drew Edmondson to beat in November.
Yep. If I was Edmondson, I would definitely want to go up against Stitt. And the reason why is that with Cornette, again, he's got a record, but he's got a pretty darn good record. It's hard to look at Oklahoma City and say, wow, he did a lousy job with that. Even in the worst of economic times for the state, Oklahoma City still flourished. And he's got leadership award after leadership award after leadership award. With Stitt, I think it's going to be, I think I know what his attack plan is going to be. He's going to be doing the same type of attack that you would do with President Trump. That you want to focus on the business. We know that he's had some controversies with his business. You're going to see a lot of that, and you're going to see a lot of this guy's unknown. This guy's owned by big business. This guy isn't out for the little man. This guy is a multimillionaire. These are the kind of attacks you're going to be seeing, and I think they can probably be pretty effective. Stitt has proven that he can be wounded when he's on the campaign trail. When he's asked certain questions, you can tell he tenses up. He gets angry about the questions about his business, for example. That would be the way to launch an attack.
I also think Cornette was one of those candidates that Democrats would stay home for. They would be like, well, I guess I'm okay. I like what he did in Oklahoma City. He's not my party, but he's not terrible either. And I think Stitt's someone who might energize Democrats to turn out to vote against, even if they're not super thrilled with Edmondson.
But he's got areas of the state like your Little Dixie, like your Panhandle, parts of the state that are very faithful to President Trump. You're going to see voting for Stitt.
Absolutely, yep.
We've already seen the negative campaign ads begin. We had one campaign ad that came out in favor of Stitt this past week.
Drew Edmondson will take a wrecking ball to Oklahoma's economy. He will raise taxes on families and even increase the state income tax. He'll expand Obamacare, blowing a bigger hole in our state's budget. Edmondson will continue his work, decimating Oklahoma's farmers and ranchers. It doesn't end there. Edmondson will eliminate deductions on investments and impose devastating taxes on the energy industry. Tell Drew Edmondson his plan to bust Oklahoma's economy will be a disaster.
Now, this was an interesting one because it was paid for by a group called the Foundation for Economic Prosperity. That group is supporting Stitt now. It was the same group that was putting forth ads attacking him in the race against Cornette. And Stitt, right now, he's distancing himself from those ads.
He is, and I believe him there. I know Edmondson also had some thoughts about this here.
Well, I believe him. This is a dark money group, so we don't know where it's coming from. We can guess where the money's coming from, but at one time that same group was attacking Stitt. So I absolutely believe, Kevin, that this wasn't his ad.
So I actually did some looking into the group themselves. They've been around since 2014. They've got a P.O. box in Oklahoma City, but their physical brick and mortar address is actually in Alexandria, Virginia. It's registered to a guy named John W. Richardson III. Mm-hmm. We don't know who that is. I haven't been able to find any real records for him. So dark money kind of through and through on this one. You didn't think it was going to be the first pack of its kind either in this race.
Oh, no, no way. And we kind of talked about this a little bit before we got on camera. This guy that you're talking about is probably a ghost. He was probably somebody who was originally part of the pack and now no longer is part of the pack. And just trying to track that dark money is, as you know, extraordinarily difficult.
Do you think Drummond, we'll get to him in a second. Do you think Drew Edmondson's response to this ad was diplomatic, or do you think it was weak?
I think it was diplomatic. I think he's absolutely right. I don't think that Stitt is behind this ad. Again, these are the same people that were a week ago attacking Stitt. I don't think Stitt's going to jump on board with them. And I think that Stitt handled this, even though he's proud to not be a politician, he handled it just like a politician should, which is, I'm not behind this, I don't know who's responsible for it, and I want nothing to do with it. Yet at the same time, the ad is still helping him generate votes. Mm-hmm. It's a win-win.
Have either of you guys been around Drew Edmondson very much?
A little bit here and there when he did State Question 777 stuff a few years ago.
As an elected official, it kind of reminds me of the dearly departed John McCain, like a straight talk express. Well, this quote, I love this from the story yesterday, Aaron. Here's what Edmondson said. He says, I believe him. 3 words. Edmondson comes across as sincere. He's straight up. We got a whole generation of people that don't know Drew Edmondson. Mm-hmm. Okay. By the way, in 1994, in the Attorney General's race, you know who 2 finalists were? Drew Edmondson and Mike Hunter. Mm-hmm. Hey, so generations of Oklahoma voters do not know these folks, mm-hmm. So they got to know Mike again. But this is a dark money group, Drew goes on to say, and then he says, so I absolutely believe, Kevin, that this wasn't his ad. Here's my question to you guys. How long does the diplomacy last? It ain't going to be long.
No. First blood has already been drawn. Whether it was from a dark money group or not, first money has already been drawn, and these guys are already on their defense. I guarantee you, minutes after that ad aired, both campaigns were already planning what their next strategy is. And it's going to be interesting to see which side draws first blood in terms of the campaign itself, not the dark money, but the campaign.
I wonder about this one. Can I just kind of go into character to read this statement right here?
Head up.
This happened yesterday, and I'm not sure the Edmondson people didn't enjoy this. This is the quote. Kevin Stitt ran a great winning campaign against a very tough opponent in Oklahoma. Kevin is a very successful businessman who will be a fantastic governor. All right, so the Trump endorsement, by the way, that wasn't George W. Bush. So the president jumps in, the ads jump in. Holy cow, we haven't even had time to catch our breath from the night before.
Right.
So does the Trump thing work in Oklahoma in November? Forget about right now, in November. The way things are happening in the swamp, if it gets worse, is this a bad thing for Mr. Stitt?
I don't know. Stitt seems to think it's going to work.
Yeah, we just got a congratulatory phone call from the president, and so it was a huge, huge honor for me to talk to the president. First time I've been able a chance to talk to him, and then he just tweeted out his support and his endorsement of us, and said we ran a great campaign, and I was excited to see what we do with Oklahoma. And he told me to keep working, He said, don't take a day off. It's a 60-day sprint. He said in his election, he worked 60 straight days from till the election day. He said, you just get one chance. And I said, absolutely, sir.
Whether or not it actually does. Now, it certainly worked for him in this runoff. He posed himself as being Oklahoma's answer to President Trump, and it worked. So is that going to hold out until November? I think the question will be, as long as President Trump continues enjoying success in Washington, it's going to work for Stitt. But if there's a stumble, if there's an indictment, that's going to change dramatically for Stitt.
I know, and I thought of this too, because I can argue both ways here, that it could hurt him, it could help him. I think in the sense that it could hurt Stitt is that if not only hit the president's successes, but also the scandals, even just the scandals continue, here, are Democrats going to turn out? Is this going to be another thing to force Democrats to the polls? And then it could also help him. I mean, like, it's one of those things where it gives Stitt some legitimacy for not having a record, that he's with the president on these things and he's in lockstep, which a lot of voting Oklahomans like.
Now, it's funny, Edmondson said he wasn't very impressed.
I don't know that it's going to have a good or bad effect. It was certainly not unexpected, and we'll continue to operate and concentrate on what's needed in Oklahoma and let Washington sort itself out if it possibly can. I know that the next governor will have to work with the administration on a variety of issues, everything from the military to agriculture, and especially FEMA if you live in Oklahoma. And I intend to have a good working relationship with the president. I'll support him when I think he's acting in the best interest of Oklahoma.
What do you think? Are you buying that? Or do you think he's nervous? Do you think this scares him?
I think it scares him a little bit. I think he's giving a lot of people who don't vote very often, especially when it's not a major general election, when it's just the midterms, that these people are going to pay a lot of attention to state or local politics. A lot of times, and especially now, your federal party is translating more and more to your state party and just down ticket voting.
Can I ask you guys this question? Because it's a little off of the topic right now, but we saw what happened in the legislative races. Media coverage of the down ballot and legislative races just wasn't there. Like it was, we know medical marijuana sucked the air out of the room, rightly so, okay? I mean, what an entertaining topic for the last 60 days.
We talked about it every time we did a show.
Every time we do a show. Yeah. And it's a great ratings booster too. But
Mitchell talks pot.
That's right. And by the way, we'll get around to it in the weather forecast. But the Oklahoma GOP House had their bloodletting the other night. 10 GOP people in races that had 10-10, the tax increase for teachers, as a centerpiece. Of those 10, 3 of them were in it because they voted yes on 10-10, were challenged from the right. 7 of that, which may have been the platform caucus, I'm not really sure who was all in that caucus, but they certainly were vocal against 10-10.
It was platform caucus.
Yeah.
6 of the 7 went down. Now, the OEA is, doing the bodybuilder deal. We took these people out. The fact is that was a Republican primary. The perspective on that has not been good. That was not a general election. That was GOP. But from the House standpoint, it looks like they got affirmation of what they did in passing the tax increase. Now, this is the House GOP. These are conservatives. John Eccles, Charles McCall, Kevin Wallace, Chris Kennedy. All of these folks are for this deal. It looks to me like, just saying here, that maybe Drew Edmondson is more in lockstep with the OK House GOP than Kevin Stitt. I look at this the other night and thinking the untold story is Kevin Stitt and the House GOP are going to be running on different directions this fall.
Yep.
Especially on education, which I think is going to play a role when we hit November.
Huge role.
Huge role. It almost can't not.
Yeah. Edmondson, I think his plan is he's going to ride the school bus all the way to the Capitol. You're going to see him pushing a lot for teachers, for increased spending for classrooms, that kind of a thing. Stitt would be wise to kind of follow suit a little bit. He's going to try to go with the whole, we don't want to raise taxes again. He would be wise to point out that, look, we're making $1.1 billion more this year than we made last year because of tax changes made by the legislature. We don't need to raise taxes again. If I was him, that's the direction that I would go with it, but I would also reinforce over and over again, we need more money in the classroom. That needs to be done. I don't think you're going to be seeing too many people talking about forced consolidation of districts.
I don't think so. That probably won't come up as much this year. I think if he does the $1.1 billion route. He's going to get some pushback from that. That's been said before, and those numbers are a little fudged. It's on my list of truth test things we'll be doing soon.
Fuzzy math.
It's a little fuzzy. I mean, my math is fuzzy in general, but like that's actually fuzzy math. I think also his first outset in the education stuff here is that he said he didn't support the tax increase at first and then walked that back, and I think that's
This is Mr. Stitt.
Yes, that's going to come back to haunt him in the coming weeks.
And Edmondson was there at the Capitol.
Right.
These obviously would have voted yes. Okay, that's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes. So there was a race decided the other night by the narrowest of margins. Here's a little known fact. I think we talked about this election night. On election night, Charles Prater, who lost in the state auditor and inspector's race, and Gentner Drummond both won the vote Tuesday on the votes were cast on Tuesday. That's what I'm trying to say. Both Ms. Byrd and Mr. Hunter won those elections because of absentee ballots.
Yep.
Isn't that amazing? What was the final total on the AG race? 294?
260, 68, I think,
Yeah.
was the difference. And initially, it was interesting because Gentner Drummond, during his watch party, he said, "No, we're still fighting. We're going to count every single one of these votes. We're still fighting."
I am a fighter. I'm not going to stop fighting until the final vote is counted, and I'm optimistic that I will be your Attorney General.
But then the very next day,
After considering whether to seek a recount and researching what that would entail, I've decided that instead we would concede the election today in an effort to bring unity to the Republican Party. The upcoming elections are critically important for the future of Oklahoma, and a statewide recount would simply serve as a prolonging distraction.
what do you think changed his mind?
Well, I want to give a shout out now to the Oklahoma Election Board, Paul Zierix and Brian Dean. We were sitting here on the studio the other night. Brian Dean was responding to my messages. It was great. The people that run the state election board are incredible people. There are no Russians involved in the Oklahoma election process, okay?
No collusion.
And one of the things that was when we went to bed the other night, very in the wee hours of the morning, was they had to look at those provisional ballots. And my guess was there's not enough provisional ballots out there to make a difference. It's very hard to change 10 or 15 votes in Oklahoma. The way the system is, it's such a good system.
Right.
It was too far ahead.
But here's the deal. There was a difference of 269 votes. There were 400 provisional votes out there. There was a possibility.
And it's not that expensive.
No.
It's like 600 bucks to get started.
Yep. There was a possibility, albeit a slight possibility, because some of those provisionals obviously would have gone toward Hunter. But there was a possibility. It's a risk I would have taken.
Mike, there was a difference of 269 votes. There were roughly 400 provisional ballots that still haven't been counted yet. Had the shoe been on the other foot, would you have conceded?
Possibly. At this point, it's really a math equation. I mean, you've got to differentiate. I guess the first slice you make is some of those are going to be Democrats, some are going to be Republicans, some are going to be Hunter votes, some are going to be Drummond votes. So when you do the math, the certainty that exists just is, I think, pretty obvious. And so that was what Mr. Drummond shared with me, that he didn't see the math working for him.
Here's a risk, too. One of the things that happened in the last 48 hours was an ad that Mr. Drummond was running that was involved talking about the Iowa murder of that co-ed. And I saw tweets from people like John Echols and Mayor Holt really slamming the Drummond campaign over that ad. It was basically trying to tie Mr. Hunter to some policy that led to this woman's murder, this young lady's murder. Do you think that having the Echolses and the Holts and people like that of the world out tweeting this is a horrible thing to do might have had something to do with it? Could have shifted 264 votes?
Maybe I think so. I mean, especially involving the death of Molly Tibbetts, this race was already ugly, and that's like pushing Willie Horton level of ugliness here. And I think they were worried, they as in probably the party, and I think the Drummond campaign were worried that if they were to go on and win this thing, that was really going to bite them in the end.
Are you buying the whole, well, we just want to bridge the divide, the rift that's been caused in the Republican
Maybe
Party?
somebody talked to him. I don't know. Maybe somebody talked to him, or maybe someone talked to his campaign manager about that from the party here, being like, this has been really bad for Republicans, and now we've got to run against a Democrat already here, and in a year where we think Democrats are going to turn out, and so you should shut up and sit down and take the loss.
I suspect that's exactly what happened.
Probably.
And I wonder what kind of a trade-off there was as a result.
I don't know if there's some other seat involved with the Beckham again for next time, or if they said we'll make you a kingmaker here on something else. I don't know what kind of fiefdom they would give him, but but I think that
It'll
probably
be
something
interesting
bad.
to see, because I would almost guarantee that his name is not going to fade completely from the political arena.
No.
I don't think so. By the way, two more ads I want to bring up to you guys. One was nobody, and we predicted otherwise, that the Bull Stitt ad was going to play a big role. Nobody's talking about that as being a cause or anything. It's just like it didn't happen.
I mean, anecdotally, I've heard a few people say like that turned them off from Cornette, but they probably wouldn't have voted for him anyway. So I think the people that were against Cornette, that just put the nail in the coffin for that one.
And certainly wouldn't have caused the wipeout that we saw on Election Day.
The second one is a down ballot race. And you know, we've talked about the down ballot coverage. It was very difficult. I mean, there's more stories than there are media in Oklahoma, right? Do what you can do. But the other one was the labor commissioner race. And when Kathy Costello, God bless Kathy Costello, a person who's had a lot of tragedy in her life, but decided to get into the public arena, which is a lot of people would go, I'm not sure you should do that, okay? Because it's a blood sport in many ways. She gets in there, she leads according to all of the polling that Shepard did all the way, right up until the end when Leslie Osborne's campaign put the ad out, which the Costello people were very upset about. It's an attack ad. The question was, it went to the qualifications in that particular race. The ad took apart her qualifications, said that she's not a teacher, she hasn't done these businesses, hasn't told the truth about what was going on here. Leslie wins. Did that ad do that? And number two, do people have a right to be outraged whenever that the media doesn't get into a campaign and people have to make their decision based upon ads?
Well, as far as the first question goes, I mean, I don't know if correlation is causation here or not. Certainly, it appears that the Osborne campaign was pulling their punches through most of that exchange up until that last weekend, and then they let the big guns fly.
And they pulled their punches. Why? I mean, we all know why they were pulling their punches.
Because it's pretty ugly to smear a widow.
Yeah.
And so I think they held that until the very last second and then did that. And maybe it helped, maybe it didn't. I don't know. I think when you look at that polling number, those polling numbers from before, nobody wants to say that they're not going to vote for the wife of the dead guy.
Right.
So.
Right. And honestly, both of them have, I would say, probably about the same amount of name recognition. They're both pretty well known. But Leslie Osborne, I think she does have a reputation as being somebody who's going to go against the Republican Party, who's going to stand up for what she believes is right, and she's known as somebody who has political connections. I don't know if Kathy Costello can say that same thing, but people love Kathy Costello.
Let me get into the wrap-up portion here and start talking about what's next. We know that...
Do you want to have us answer that second question too, about whether they can be mad at us or not?
Please do. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
I think I already know the answer, but have
apologies,
that. Have that.
No, I mean, like, they have to be informed voters, and we do our best, but like you said, there's only so mumuch media, and we only have so much airtime and so much column inches, so many column inches for if it's print or whatever. We can only be so many places. We are but two people. So, like, I think voters have to take a little bit of that on themselves to go to these things. There's plenty of opportunities out there. They're going to continue to be for them to go to forums, to go to debates, to go to town halls in the coming weeks that I think they have to get out there a little bit. We're going to do everything we can, but we can't be everywhere.
And I think Oklahomans are pretty politically savvy, too. They look at not just the ad, but who's paying for the ad. And I think that has a lot to do with it, too.
Truth test, are we going to see a lot of them over the next 60 days?
Yes, that bin is full in my desk right now.
How many truth tests can you do?
Until I die, until it kills me.
Well, how about in the next 60 days? Narrow it down.
Then also the same answer. I don't know, we can do, if I really push it, we could probably do 3 a week until November, and then probably take the last 4 days off before the election.
It's important to lay out, though, you ticked off a few people with your truth test because you're not reaching out to the campaigns for a response.
No.
And there's a reason for that.
That's not how these work. So basically, these are just straight up, straight down testing of what's being said about a person or what a person has said. We're not looking for their spin on it afterwards. We're not looking for their input. That's a normal news story. This is a fact check of a thing that was said in context, but also not without their spin on it.
The thin skin could turn out to be a big issue. It happened many years ago in the Brad Henry, Steve Largent race. Local reporter kept asking Steve Largent about questions during 9/11. He was in the mountains. His campaign staff, or actually his congressional staff, put out some information that wasn't quite on target with the truth. And in this interview, he just got addled, and then he said a word, which was actually used a little bit in a big campaign ad right here, but with the Cornette campaign recently. But you just have to think that one through where it went. And a lot of people went, wow, it was kind of a turning point. Mr. Largent seemed thin-skinned, and of course Brad Henry won a race that nobody really thought he could win.
Sure.
Legislatively, with what happened, Aaron, with the GOP runoffs, these 6 people of the 7 that take out the platform caucus, are you looking for the D's to take those seats?
I doubt the D's are going to take the seats. It's still Oklahoma. But I think that a very strong message was sent.
Do you think Charles McCall, John Echols at all are concerned at all about keeping power?
No, not even a little bit.
Will the Democrats pick up more than 5 seats?
Maybe 5.
And the balance of power, if they pick up 5, does it matter at all?
No, there won't be any shift.
Oh, that's a dark forecast for the Democrats.
Especially if a Democrat wins the governorship.
Yeah.
What are we looking for this coming week? We got a week off, a weekend off, Labor Day. It's going to be quiet for the most part, I assume, but I thought that until yesterday when those ads started coming out.
I think we're going to start seeing ads this weekend. The reason being, people are home. People are going to be watching TV, and this is when I would start running the ads.
Maybe 1 or 2 campaign stops in some of the more rural parts of the state, some of the southeastern parts of the state maybe, where Edmondson has ties to, because he'll be home himself. So maybe some of that. A lot more from medical marijuana this week as well.
We almost didn't talk about it.
We almost didn't talk about it. I wasn't going to not talk about it.
This close.
The licenses are going out. Doctors are registering for patients. And there's some other things happening with the working group that we probably don't have time to get into today.
You know what Bud Scott said in a tweet in the last 48 hours? His group said Oklahoma is about to become the dark weed capital of the world, saying the regulation's just not there and that it could get really ugly here. That's a story worth following. All right, great Labor Day weekend for all of you. I hope you have a lot of time this weekend. Say hello to family. For Grant Herms, for Aaron Brillbeck, Scott Mitchell, we'll see you next week.